Well, it began in a rather sort of circulatory route. I was making a piece of work in Jersey, where I'm from, out of Jersey granite, and I'd installed it in Jersey and New Jersey, and I was looking for a Pacific location. It needed to be World War II defences, concrete defences. And I put into Google those terms, and up came Bribie Island. And up came the name Ian Fairweather, and I knew nothing about Ian, and an artist friend of mine told me how significant he was in Australia. And so I started to explore from then. So it was the other way around. I found him through the place, the final place, rather than through the artist in the normal sense. I wouldn't actually describe his life as one of travel. It was more of wandering. It was more he was seeking a location. He was seeking to find himself, and so he went to places that appealed to him in a really sort of deep and meaningful way, as a place that he could practice and live as an artist. Yeah, I think what was fundamental to him was being accepted by the art community in Melbourne. So after he left Bali and he went to Australia, he was really embraced in a way that obviously made him feel more confident. By that point, he really wanted to embrace life as an artist. But he didn't stay within those circles. It wasn't for him to be part of an art community in that way. And so there were various other peregrinations and wanderings, and yes, let's call it travel then from that point of view. And I think once he found Bribie Island, it was somewhere that was suitably sort of tropical, a bit exotic, but also very quiet, and somewhere where he could be left alone. Oh, absolutely. I think it was fundamental to him to not have the responsibilities and pressures of a life that was conforming with other people around. And he was variously labelled as a hermit and recluse, but I think those are sort of almost negative connotations. For him, it was a very positive thing to be alone and left alone to work. Yeah, I mean, outsider artist is a difficult term, but he did have traditional training, so he wouldn't qualify as an outsider artist in that term, because he spent time at the Slade. So he was trained at the Slade under Henry Tonks, so it was very formal training. But I think by having that formal training, he was then liberated to go his own way. And certainly the outsiderness is also the lack of feeling as though he had to use proper materials. He used non-traditional materials, and he used non-traditional processes of lots and lots of layers. It's a nightmare for conservators of his work, and that's why his work rarely travels. But it means that the practice of the art was for him what it was all about, the process and the building, rather than the legacy of a painting that someone would then put on a wall. Principally because it was such an early work, and it was quite a change of style for him when he got to Bali. But he was starting to find his own way and take himself seriously as an artist. So he spent 9 months in Bali, and he was fascinated by ritual, and he had been studying Asian cultures, particularly Chinese and Japanese. And so I think in what he found in Bali was a continuation of ritual practice that he could watch and respond to. So it was almost like a document of what he was seeing around him, which would have been pretty constant because of the amount of ritual in Bali, the amount of processions that happen on a daily basis. And he was influenced by Cézanne, and I think you can see in this painting the influence of the bathers by Cézanne. Well, in terms of, obviously the painting, it's amazing to see the painting displayed like that. I was very thrilled to be able to include some Gamelan instruments that came from a school in Leicester. It was actually a long process of trying to find some Gamelan kit to use as a way of accessing the work, because people might be familiar with Gamelan if they're not familiar with Balinese painting in any way. So I was very pleased to find that. Also the material that came from the archive in Leicester, which tells the history of the painting, including the fact that it was oil on paper, but it was reinforced with canvas, which is actually very important because it was quite often miscatalogued as oil on canvas, and it wasn't. It was only because it came and was found to be in quite a fragile state, it was reinforced. So that material, which comes from the archive here, is really important. And also the use of a documentary called Fairweather Man, which was made in 2009, and it's lovely to be able to use these clips from the Australian producers. There's obviously the paintings which Fairweather made, which are in other UK collections. It's good to give a sense of those as well. And also Fairweather's contemporaries. It was fabulous to find, going through the artworks at Leicester, using the Art UK site, that there were so many Australian paintings, including a lot by Sidney Nolan and also by Arthur Boyd, which are more familiar names. And bringing those together with Fairweather's in the same space was an important move for me. Well, it's a bit of serendipity that it's happening now because it's the 50th anniversary of Fairweather's death in May the 20th. And this is the first exhibition of Fairweather in the UK. And bearing in mind he's a British artist who was part of the British art scene for a short period of time before he went to Asia and then Australia. I think it's important for people to look at other ways of practice and other artists' lives. I mean, it is a bit of a cliche to think of a starving artist in a garret, and Fairweather certainly didn't live a comfortable life by what we might expect from the outside, as it were. But he lived the life he needed to have as an artist. It was the way that he needed to work, despite what other people said and what they tried to enforce on him to leave his handmade hut that he made on Bribie Island and go into something that was more hygienic or whatever. He had a huge battle with the council there, and they tore down the hut just after he died, immediately after actually he died. So I think, flagging up an artist's resistance is really important as well. Wasn't very well known in Britain, but I think people might be able to understand the process and the way that he felt he needed to live to make work. Well, for me, this is part of the process. I'm following Fairweather, and I'll continue to follow him. I've been to Scotland and seen where he was born. I've obviously just come back from Bali, and I'm going to be going to the Philippines to continue following the trail there. He absolutely fascinates me. I think it's terrific that this is on view, but it also flags up a time when provincial museums and art galleries had a real clout. I mean, the fact that of the paintings he made in Bali, we have the one here in Leicester, and the other one was bought by the Tate. So, it gives a sort of sense that when people had purchasing power in the 1930s, it came from a real knowledge of the art world and the art scene, and including Fairweather in an exhibition in Leicester in 1936 with other well-known artists as well. Somebody was ahead of the game and could see, he was an potentially important artist, and to celebrate. And one of the letters actually in the cabinet from the archive is from a visitor in the 1940s and a passionate collector of Fairweather, who said how much Leicester should be congratulated, the people of Leicester should be congratulated on having this wonderful painting. So I think it's important for Leicester to have a pat on the back for having this. And you asked me again about another highlight. I think the painting His Land by Hilda Rix Nicholas, which ends the show. It was painted in the 1920s and was bought in 1926 by Leicester Museum and Art Gallery. as part of a tour that she did of regional galleries with her work, trying to sell them. And somebody, again, as early as that, thought, yeah, this is worth collecting. And it was a very interesting exhibition because it was also designed to encourage people to go to Australia. So there was a dialogue that was going on that perhaps people wouldn't expect. One thing that also needs to be pointed out is how important Fairweather is in Australia. Every national gallery has several Fairweathers, and particularly at Quagoma, the gallery in Queensland, which also has some of the archive. They have a whole room dedicated to him. And I have had amazing help and cooperation from the galleries in Australia, and I'm really grateful for that. They've been very proactive in wanting to help spread the word.